Senior Buscador couldn't get the job done for me last week on Doubling Down. Door knock was impressive and got me and Matt home through the first leg. I need to pay attention to Matt DeSantis. Whenever he starts to tell me about a pace of a race and why a horse that he doesn't like is a horse I shouldn't like, I should have paid attention, as you as well, Mark Palmer, in the comments, who talked about the difficulty that Senior Buscador would have at that mile distance at Aqueduct. And ultimately, he had a really nice run there in the stretch, just couldn't get home in time. You got to learn to handicap your handicappers. So if Matt DeSantis is telling you this is how the pace of the race is going to set up, we should all heed that advice and pay attention. So this weekend, we try to get back on the winning streak. We're heading to Oaklawn, and we've got another special guest for you this week on Doubling Down. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Trust the Profits. Please like and subscribe. I'm so glad to have another new voice here on this show. As I told you over a year ago, we've made it over a year now, Chase, on Doubling Down here. It's here to have you listen and hear from a whole variety of different voices in the handicapping and horse racing world, whether it's Twitter or podcasts or whatever. And so with the opening of Oaklawn, I decided let's grab the Wolf of Oaklawn, the notorious OTB. Chase, how are you? Welcome.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you having me. And, always love coming on and talking Oaklawn ponies. And congrats on the year, man. That's always a big deal, getting that year under the belt.
It is. I'm going to start putting the episode numbers at the beginning of the titles of this, because to me, it's, you start these shows and you're like, is this going to get legs? And are people going to enjoy it? And the steam's picking up. We've had some great guests on. I appreciate yourself. We can find you at the Notorious OTB podcast on all of the places you can find your podcast. And what can we expect this week from you with the opening of Oaklawn?
Yeah, let's see. Today, we took a look at the early pick 5. That's our Wednesday show. For Thursday, I've got Sarah L. Bodway from America's Day at the Races on FS1 and Talking Horses on YouTube, joining with Crystal Conning, the new paddock analyst at Oaklawn Park, to do like a 10-race, $2 mythical win place tournament. And then I'll have Andrew Champagne this Friday to talk the closing pick 5 for the weekend, the Saturday late pick 5.
That's awesome. We love it. Is the Daily Double a bet that's in your arsenal?
Oh, yes. I'm a firm believer that some of the best places to find value in horse racing still is a good slammed daily double. Doing your math and making sure that you're actually, not going to lose money to like a win parlay or anything. But, making a wise daily double is such a great feeling because it just hits you 2 times,
That's right. And I always say on this show, my viewers that are regulars will hate to hear me say it again, but you can't hit the 4s and the 5s if you can't put at least 2 together. And I think they've seen on this show, it's harder than you would expect. And I think it really, if you break down a pick 4 into 2 daily doubles, that's how I kind of like to approach it if I'm going to go with one of those longer pick 4s or pick 5s. And so it just shows how hard it is for those of you that are new to horse racing. And hopefully we can give you a little insight here. As we go to Oaklawn for Saturday, December 9th, we decided to go to the late daily double, starting with the Mistletoe. And we have the return of last year's winner, number 4, Lovely Ride. You've got a little interesting mix here. You have some great full fields at Oaklawn, so certainly pay your attention to the nice fields you're going to get this weekend. You've got a horse here in the number 3 who's coming off of its maiden victory. You've got the number 5, Saddle Up Jesse, who's finally shown some success switching over to the dirt. You have a nice field of 11. Where did you end up here in the Mistletoe Stakes?
So I had to take into consideration that we're going to get some weather at Oaklawn. And so thinking about it this far ahead, I'm not sure what kind of track I'm going to get. And so what I tried to do was split up and find 2 horses that I like, one that I think can run on the front and steal it on the front on a sloppy track, and one that on maybe a harrowed track or a track that's maybe a little bit more saturated could pick up the pieces from behind. And that put me on 2 horses. The one that I like that ran from the front is going to be the 4 last year's champion, Lovely Ride. I have a little bit of a relationship with the connections. John Holloman, he was on the podcast, I think last week. And he's nice enough to let me sit in his box, and please do not revoke that privilege from me.
You have to pick them then.
Yeah, and Lovely Ride. This horse runs its eyeballs out every single time. you know exactly what you're going to get. And it's what's a better way to win a sloppy sealed Mistletoe Stakes than with the horse that won a sloppy sealed Mistletoe Stakes last
Mhm.
year.
Yep.
So I liked Lovely Ride in that spot. And then the horse that I want picking up the pieces is Saddle Up Jesse. I was really interested in Saddle Up Jesse last week in the Go for Wand before it scratched out there and shipped down. I wonder if they were trying to avoid some weather because it was really wet and what that might do with Saddle Up Jesse. But if we look at the pedigree, it's not like there's any kind of issue in terms of worrying about what the horse can do. I believe it's by more than ready, and so should handle an off going just fine. So I tried to split it up to where, since I wasn't really quite sure meteorologically, I guess, where to go with it, to kind of cover myself in two ways here.
Yeah, and I looked at a horse such as Coastal Charm, the number 6 here, who is going to be that early speed, right? It actually has a victory on the off track and a second place. You see all those ones on the past performances, but the thing that I like about Brisnet is they'll give you the negative or positive of a number based on what the pace was in those races. And so all those races where you see this horse had success winning on the front end, did it with a pretty slow pace up front, was able to kind of control the pace in those races. And so I knocked Coastal Charm down a little bit, even though it probably might check some of those boxes that you just mentioned, as far as being on the front end and also handling a wet track in the past. I agree with you on Saddle Up Jesse. First time through, I had a hard time eliminating a lot. I think you could go a lot of different ways in this race, and I like to show the Brisnet prime power numbers here just to give a little sense, right? So we always talk about, is there a 10-point separation, and where do you see that? Well, from here at 135 on the top, you got to go all the way down to almost the bottom to get that 10-point separation, and that shows you pretty quickly how competitive of a race this might be. Saddle Up Jesse, to me, I just saw those races that were on the turf, switched to the dirt. Santa Anita ran 2 races in the off track, so I would assume that day there was a little bit of moisture in the track in order for it to get moved off at Delaware, and had 2 victories there, including a 17-length victory. Now, of course, that was in maiden claiming company, but came back at Laurel with 2 really nice races on the track as well. So that's where I ended up landing on. That's how I got to Saddle Up Jesse, which is interesting to hear how you got there, which is 2 different ways. But that's the fun of this game, and 2 of us can look at something and see something differently. I'm also going to follow my man Ricardo Santana here. I think Ice Orchid in general is one of the best horses. We don't have morning lines as we tape this on Wednesday night, which can I go on my soapbox over here? Where are the morning lines and who's doing them?
What I figured out last night apparently is that you have to jump and swing on a vine across a pit of snakes to ask a troll his riddles 3 to figure out who makes the morning line at Oaklawn Park. This is the most confusing thing I've ever heard, honestly, in horse racing.
Yeah, so that's why we do this, and I love handicapping without them because I don't feel like I'm jaded by them. But when I do this show, I always like to have a sense of, well, am I picking all chalk, or because I'm not the best at putting together what I think the odds will be. But I think Ice Orchids, 11 for 14 in the money, and a little bit of me is following that Ricardo Santana train, who in the past has done well at Oaklawn and is one of my favorite jockeys. This horse is a horse that I think can come from off the pace. As you mentioned, the weather, I see only raced on 1 off track and didn't get in the money in there. But I think Ice Orchid's a solid option here to get through.
They come from my favorite connections at Oaklawn Park, and especially in Archie bred racing with Shortleaf Stables. Shortleaf Stables puts out great horses. If you look back at Ice Orchid's previous running lines, you'll notice that they hardly ever run their horses on any sort of Lasix. So it's not like you're not getting any of the BS that comes with taking Lasix off, putting them back on, or anything like that. It's hard to stay away from Ice Orchid, and it's real hard to stay away from the Black Magic jockey Ricardo Santana Jr. at Oaklawn Park. He's aggressive and he does what he needs to do.
Yeah, and that's ultimately why I went against Effortlessly Elegant, who Ricardo Santana had been running all the time, right? I thought that horse was interesting in here, has 2 wins at Oaklawn, 3-year-old, but I followed that Santana and ended up going with Ice Orchid. Anyone else you're worried about? Anybody else you want to touch upon, or you think we're going to get through both with Saddle Up Jesse?
I can't think of Butterbean without thinking of Butterbean, the
Yeah.
knockout machine, the old
Yes,
boxer.
absolutely. Yep. In his red, white, and blue shorts.
Oh yeah, he's pretty much just the king, whatever the character was from Mike Tyson's Punch Out, but he
Yes.
was pretty much
Yes.
just that guy.
Absolutely. So we move on to race 10. And as I mentioned, you're getting some full fields here. And we'll go right back with it with a field of 12 with an also entered in your number 13. I had some speed here, especially the number 5, 1, 2, 6, the 7. I thought were all going to be interesting, at least going in the front end. Who did you end up here in the closing leg at Oaklawn on Saturday, December 9th?
So in my mind, whenever I'm playing these sort of horizontals, whenever I have a race that I think can be won by a horse that's coming from off the pace, it's like, how many salmon do I need to unleash upstream so hopefully this ticket can spawn? I like to throw run styles at it, and that's essentially what I did with 2 new geldings too: the 3 St. Andrews, the 9 Affable Monarch, and the 12 Spin Benjamins. Who I know you look at the Briz figures. If you look at those closing pace, the late pace figures for these horses, they're all going to be coming late. They all have a pace to run into. I love seeing horses, once they're gelded, looking at their workout tabs, seeing just consistent workout times. Like the horse is more focused, like, doing the ballectomy actually did what it was supposed to do for the horse. And that's what I'm getting out of St. Andrews. And that's what I'm getting out of Affable Monarch. And I can just kind of see I call it the rail and trail bias at Oaklawn Park, where it's the rail and then it's the tractor trail out in the middle, and it's just kind of dead right in the middle. I could see a horse, especially drawn wide, and then like with Affable Monarch and with Gunflash, the 12. I could see those being horses that could make that move up the middle. It would most likely have to be St. Andrews to sneak up the rail from that inside draw. But I thought throwing a run style was the best bet to get me home there.
Yeah, I agree with you on the 12, and we always love when both of us can win. That has never happened on Doubling Down. So we're on episode like 57, and we've never had both of us win. A lot of us have gone 1 for 2. A lot of us have gone 1 for 2 when the person's hit the opposite race. So 5 and 12 would be a daily double that we could both get home. I wrote down for Spend Benjamins needs pace. I think we just talked about this horse is going to get that. I also wrote down might be sitting on a career best, and I'm using Brisnet when I look at my speed figures, but earned a coupled 91 coming from off the layoff, and now we're getting third off the layoff, and this horse's career best was a 94, which it put up in July, right? So the horse is 5 years old. There's no reason to not expect that this horse is a late bloomer and could be getting another step up off of a 91. If this horse puts up another 94 or better, right? If it's a career best, let's say it's a 96 and 97. To me, that's absolutely there. Now, one of the concerns about Spend Benjamins is look at the start. If you run down the start line of where this horse starts, it's 8-5-5, 8-8-9, 8-6-6-6. So you're not getting a horse running out of the chute here. But as you mentioned in the 12 hole, hopefully the speed, it's not like you need him to get to the front and cross over, right? Which is always probably a much more concerning path to victory. This horse can let him go. And if you say the middle of the track's a little lumpy, then wait till you get past that and save your space on the back end of that. So that's where I came up with number 12. Has had some success at Oaklawn as well in March and April with first, a second, and a third. So can't go wrong there. Has not raced on the off track. How bad's the weather looking for Saturday? Are we getting hit bad?
Right now it's teetering around like a 60% chance last I saw. And it didn't look like it was going to be like inches of rain or anything, but it's going to be enough. It's going to be certainly more than a spilled beer, probably less than the Great Flood that Noah built the ark for.
All right. We'll take that. We'll take that. The only other place I went was I did go with the 7. Is on top on the Prime Power WW Scouts Honor. I wrote down
hard time not using that horse too.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. I just wrote down, I think this horse is tactical, has run on the front end, has been able to pass horses late. And then, I mean, bullet central over here, baby. Just look at, it's just bullet, 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 bullet.
It's like a bandolier.
Yeah, and, those are 1 out of 6, 1 out of 7s. Those aren't crazy, but you got a 1 out of 15 and a 1 out of 27 there. So those are the two that I ended up off. The other note that I had written down was you're getting Francisco Arrieta, who's got a first and a second by a neck, and those are kind of the two best performances that this horse has put on paper, including that 94 Brisnet speed figure back on May 6th at Oaklawn, and 16 for 20 in the money as well.
I think you also still managed to get a little bit of a price here because the horse is coming from FanDuel Park in St. Louis. And I do think that people, especially people who don't necessarily know Oaklawn and don't know that a horse is live from anywhere at that track, will see other horses coming in from Kentucky, from Oklahoma, from Louisiana, and be more drawn to that. And I think he probably keeps your price pretty fair on WW Scout's Honor. I had a hard time turning away just because of the reason that you mentioned. The horse is very tactical.
I have one question for you. I had one horse that I had a hard time turning away. That was the 5, Bolt 45, who, as we talked about, being on the front end. This horse has been increasing in speed figures. Obviously had a little bit of a slip up there on July 24th, but the workouts to me, jumped off the page. I love those 2 bullets at Oaklawn. And then coming back December 2nd with basically a refresher, that 110 6 furlong victory. I think that time certainly could put this Bolt 45 in the conversation here. And so that was the one that I was like back and forth on. So if there's one that I might throw in, if you wanted to spend the extra $2 on my ticket, Bolt 45 was one I was interested. Any intrigue there?
What I like to do is I take a look at basically the average of like the last 3 speed figures when I toss out either track conditions if they're not going to match, or trouble trips. And when I did that, it looked like Bolt 45 had everything I like to see, which back class, previous winner in an allowance race. Like you mentioned, the workouts. I love horses making this sort of workout move. We're going 2 fast works and a slow work. The Asmussen power move, the Assman power move, as me and my friends like to call it. And I just couldn't get there because I didn't think that, factoring all that in, that Bolt 45 was fast enough to be as fast as, say, the average speed of the rest of the field. That's kind of how I like to look at it. To qualify to win to me, you need to be at least as fast as the average after I kind of do my backwards fuzzy gambling math.
Yeah, and that's absolutely your concern here. But my argument against it would be the horse is only 3 years old, so they're later in the season here, right? We're moving into December, hasn't raced in July. I don't have eyes on the horse being up here, but maybe you've seen some maturity if you check that horse out, and that's what you're hoping for. And if you get a price and maybe this horse pops off what it did back on July 7th, then maybe that's how you can get home your double with a nice pay.
You bring up the most, definitely good counterpoint to that, to my point, which was we're not betting on what the horse did a couple races back. We're betting on what we think they're going to do there. And if you see improvement, that's not a horse I could take you off of, because that 89 and that win at Prairie Meadows is a big enough figure to win this race. It's just the question is, could it put it back up? And if it regresses, how far does it regress? And I can't talk you off of it. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, he's not on my ticket, so he just won for us, right?
There we go.
All right. Chase goes 4-5 with the 3-9-12. It'll cost you $6. I go 5-10 and 7-12 in leg 2. It'll cost you only $4. Chase, they can't blame us if we miss, because we only cost them a cup of coffee. Check out payhip.com/trusttheprofits. You can sign up now for the free for the premium membership of power figures that we started giving out and trying to put together. The formula has been hitting on fire at Parks, and we're going to bring that to Oaklawn Park this weekend. So if you want to compare what he came up with what we've come up with, be sure to check that out. Chase, you survived the hot seat on Doubling Down. Thank you so much for joining us this week.
It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, and I'll have to get you on the Notorious OTB soon.
I love it. I'm Colin Sheehan. He's Wolf of Oaklawn. Give us a follow. Put in the comments who you like. Please like and subscribe. And until next time, this is Doubling Down.